This right here is one of the newest OLED gaming monitors on the block. It's called the ROG XG27UCDMG. Not quite the easiest name to remember in the world, but as one of the first brand new OLED products I'm looking at in 2025, I want to know just how much better the tech has gotten in the past year or two, and if you should actually buy one. Let's find out. Before we continue, I'd like to thank Notion for sponsoring this portion of the video. If you've been watching Denki for a while, you might know that I've been using Notion for years to literally organize everything from video planning and scripts to tracking equipment and coordinating with my team here on the channel. It has been absolutely essential for my workflow. But now, Notion has taken on something we all struggle with, and that is email overload. And to fix that, they have Notion Mail, which has been an absolute game changer to clean up my inbox. What I love about it is that I can personalize my inbox to match my workflow. I've set up custom views for different projects I'm working on, which keeps everything organized and helps me focus on what matters most instead of drowning in a sea of unrelated messages. The built-in scheduling feature has also been a lifesaver. Instead of that endless back and forth trying to set up meetings with people, I just drop my availability with the /schedule command, and people can book time with just one click. It is so much better. And since I am constantly replying to similar messages, the reusable snippets feature lets me save common responses that I can insert with just one click, including attachments. No more digging through sent emails and copy-pasting the same info over and over again. However, the best part of all of this is that it uses the same clean, intuitive Notion interface I already know and love, and there was basically zero learning curve. If you would like to transform your Gmail experience, connect your account to Notion Mail for free by clicking on the link in the description below or by scanning the QR code on your screen. Again, huge thanks to Notion for supporting the content we make here on Denki. And now, back to the video. Over the past 3 years, we've talked a lot about OLED monitors, especially when it comes to using one with your computer. While it certainly has huge benefits to image quality, especially with per-pixel dimming that allows for insane levels of contrast over LCD, even today, for as far as the tech has come, there is a perception that OLEDs are much more prone to long-term wear and tear with issues like dead pixels and specifically image burn-in. And considering a lot of computer use involves static UI elements on screens such as taskbars and HUDs in video games, the fear isn't totally unwarranted. However, all this being said, that's never really stopped me. I bought a 48-inch LG C10 OLED TV about 4 years ago at this point to use on my desk with my gaming PC. And since then, I've never looked back. On top of that, here in the office, I actually ran a pretty similar setup for productivity with a 42-inch LG C2 TV hooked up to my MacBook Pro that I use for research and editing videos. That display stuck around for about 2 years before I upgraded to a 4K UltraGear OLED, also from LG, which I found to be a sweet spot. While both displays were 4K, the pixel density at 32 inches was quite high. It made for a very sharp looking picture, especially when it came to things like text and fine lines, something that OLED displays traditionally struggle with. I know I'm yapping quite a bit with all of this context, and we still have to talk about this specific ROG OLED with all of the pros and cons and whatnot. Just so you know, Asus did send this out to me for review, though they aren't paying me for what I'm about to say about it. But yeah, let's talk about the specs. One more time with the name, this is the ROG XG27UCDMG. It is a 27-inch QD-OLED, or quantum dot, with a 4K resolution. Already, I can tell you that the pixel density is what drew me to this display the most. Now, obviously, 28-inch 4K LCDs have been around for basically ever, but up until this point, OLEDs at this size basically topped out at 1440p. So that extra resolution is pretty neat. You also get a 240Hz refresh rate, 0.03 millisecond response time as well, which is quite fast compared to LCD, though is standard among OLEDs. Basically what this means is there's no motion blur whatsoever, which is especially nice, especially in game types such as FPS or fighting games, where frame accurate tracking is super important. Even though I'm not much of a scientific testing house here on Denki, this monitor, at least on paper, does boast 1,000 nits of peak brightness, which, at least to my eye, I can believe it, especially compared to the previous gen OLEDs that I've tried. And I must say, in the real world, the XG27-inch OLED from ROG does look really sweet. Hopping between my gaming rig here with a 4070 Ti Super as well as a PS5 Pro, I can definitely confirm OLED is absolutely the play. A game like Valorant really shines on here. The image is super contrasty, the colors pop, it is sharp, and most importantly, fast. It might not feel as snappy as those 480Hz modes that we find on some OLEDs, but especially in HDR, games that really thrive with high-fidelity graphics such as Cyberpunk 2077 really do shine on an OLED, but especially with this added pixel density, if you can actually manage to play close to or at 4K, the game really comes alive. The neon signs and dark alleyways of Night City look absolutely incredible with the perfect blacks that you can only find on OLED. Quite simply, there's no LCD on the market that can match the level of contrast and actual detail in the shadows that would normally get crushed on other displays. Then when it comes to the game that I actually play the most, Gran Turismo 7 on the PS5 Pro, with graphics priority and ray tracing on, man, the sharpness, again, at 4K resolution at 27 inches, it really doesn't get old. After playing over 300 hours in this game, I gotta say that playing on this 27-inch OLED has to be the best by far. Now, importantly, as a computer monitor, you probably won't be playing games 100% of the time. And honestly speaking, traditionally, productivity is where OLEDs have kind of fallen short. Finer details such as text and hard lines were always rendered quite soft on some OLEDs, thanks to how light and color are arranged at a sub-pixel level. But regardless of how the science and physics works behind this, the sheer brute force approach of cramming 4K worth of pixels into a 27-inch display really takes care of this problem for the most part. Text in documents, code in development environments, and even fine UI elements look incredibly crisp. PPI police? Y'all might be onto something. We already know that OLED offers excellent colors, but with this being quantum dot, it literally takes things up a notch in terms of brightness and color vibrancy. Again, I'm not the channel for scientific tests or anything like that. There are plenty of outlets that do this if you are looking for it. But to my eye, this new generation of QD-OLED seriously packs a punch over previous years. Now, while this XG27-inch 4K OLED might share the same panel from Samsung as other products, where we usually see the difference between all of them is how they execute. Things like software processing, how they push the monitor, even how they mitigate things like wear and tear with burn-in can be different across all the companies. For example, on this particular monitor, ROG has Anti-Flicker 2.0 as one of the listed features, which is said to automatically smoothen luminance during changes in refresh rate without adding any input lag. This processing trick is meant to make the viewing experience way more comfortable, though to be honest, you really have to look out for it in order to notice. Apart from the standard features that a lot of OLEDs include to preserve the life of the panel, this monitor also has what ASUS call their Neo proximity sensor. Basically, the idea is that if you are active in front of the monitor, it will keep the display on, but once it notices that you step away, it'll put the display to sleep, only keeping the panel running when you need it, and therefore increasing the life of the screen. It is worth noting that you can turn this feature on and off as you please, though personally I've just been keeping it off since, again, I'm pretty comfortable with using my OLEDs for an extended period of time. But still, it's a pretty neat feature. Now, this display has a glossy finish, and of course the discourse on matte versus glossy coatings on screens will never end. As a creator myself, I will always prefer matte since I'd rather it pick up less reflections. But I do recognize that things like color and contrast look way punchier on glossy displays. And especially for a monitor that's focused on content consumption versus content creation, I think that trade-off is worth it. That being said, something that I dislike about QD-OLED panels, such as this one sourced from Samsung displays, is that apart from the reflections that it can pick up from ambient light in your room, it can also result in extra purple tint in your image as well. You can especially notice this when the screen renders something dark, namely in gray and black tones, and this can even diminish the contrast just a little bit. It might even be distracting for some people. It's not to say that WOLED sourced from LG, such as the Sony in-zone OLED we looked at a couple of months ago, are free from reflections in your room, but the effect is certainly not as egregious, especially with its matte coating. Ironically, how we get this slightly annoying purple tint on QD-OLED stems from its anti-reflective coating. To be fair, this isn't something that dimming or reorienting lights in your room can't fix, but regardless, it is something to consider if you do have a bright room or perhaps have this next to a window that gets a lot of sun. Besides that gripe, again, I can't stress enough how much I do like the image quality on this display, especially in the right conditions. However, beyond how the display actually looks, there are a ton of quality of life features that make this a well-rounded package. For one, while the XG27 OLED has a standard OSD just like every other monitor on the planet, this one does have the ability to access its settings and change profiles through the ASUS Display Widget Center software on PC, so you don't have to fiddle around with the little nub on the back. And honestly, that is rather nice, especially since this OSD is surprisingly low res. Not that it has to be, I mean, it's not like you're going to be seeing the OSD all the time, but the fact that you can actually change all of this stuff on your PC pretty seamlessly is also a nice touch. You can even map hotkeys on your keyboard to monitor profiles if you happen to have specific settings for certain games or content, which is pretty cool. Of course, ASUS aren't the only ones with this cross-monitor PC functionality. I've seen it from LG and even Sony with their in-zone products, but it is genuinely cool to see that we are getting this deeper monitor integration on your computer. It just makes sense. Moving on top of having HDMI 2.1 and DisplayPort 1.4 on the back, I also like that this monitor has a full-fledged USB-C port with DP capabilities and even 90-watt fast charging. Of course, this maxes out any charging that you will see on today's smartphones, but where you will see the most use out of this is if you plan on plugging in, say, a MacBook or some kind of gaming laptop that supports power delivery. This could be a really nice one-cable solution for some people. If not for that, again, you can use it to charge your phone, and on the actual stand itself, there is a little slot here to prop your smartphone up, which is nice to see. In fact, just in general, this stand is pretty sweet in and of itself. Apart from all of the standard adjustability and cable management, probably my favorite feature of this stand is the fact that it has a 1/4-20 tripod screw thread at the top to mount things like lights or cameras. It is such a simple thing, but honestly, with the amount of people that are making content or even just chatting online these days, it goes a long way in terms of convenience. I know we talked about how the XG27 OLED has self-preservation features built in, just like a lot of other OLEDs on the market, but thankfully ASUS does have a 3-year warranty to cover things such as burn-in and dead pixels. Of course, it is worth noting that there are still some concerns that people might have with regards to ASUS customer service, especially considering their PR stuff that they were going through last year. But it does seem like they've come a long way to improve. At least looking at some more recent RMA experiences shared on Reddit, it does appear like people have been getting good experiences, so that's good to see. Okay, so there is a lot to love about the XG27 OLED, but it is time to talk about the elephant in the room. which is price. Right here in the United States, this monitor, which is only available at Best Buy or on ASUS's online store, retails for $979, which certainly positions it as being a more premium gaming product, but for what you're getting here, I don't think that price is totally crazy. In the scheme of 4K OLEDs on the market right now, this does go up against some 32-inch models from last year, such as this MSI QD-OLED, as well as my beloved LG Ultra Gear that's still sitting on my desk right now. That's 4K 240Hz, and you can find these for anywhere between $900 to $1,000. Those are certainly good options to consider as well, though I do think there is a lot of value in the added pixel density that comes from a 4K 27-inch display. Now, with that being said, because a lot of companies source their OLED panels from two companies, LG and Samsung, you can actually get a 27-inch 4K QD-OLED from Alienware, which has the same core panel as the ROG, but with a lower MSRP of $900. Of course, the execution will be slightly different between these two products, but if you were simply looking for a 27-inch 4K OLED, the option's there. Now, for the question of whether you should actually buy the XG 27-inch OLED, it really depends on your use case. If you are primarily a competitive gamer who values response time and smooth motion above all else, this is certainly one of the best displays you can get right now. For content creators who work with HDR video or do color-sensitive work while also gaming, this is an excellent option, though I'd recommend considering a calibration tool to dial things in perfectly. It is worth noting that if you want OLED but can sacrifice a bit on resolution, you can absolutely save a ton of money going down to 1440p. Older generation OLEDs can be had for as low as $500 these days. And of course, there is always the LCD route if you really want bang for your buck. But I think that if there's anything that the XG27 OLED has shown me, it's that gaming OLEDs are more worth it than ever before in 2025, now that they've come down in price a significant amount over the past couple of years. If not for today, I think we are only a few generations out from seeing truly affordable 4K OLEDs that are brighter and will probably last way longer too. But let me know, what do you think about gaming OLEDs in the comments below? And otherwise, thanks for watching this video on Denki channel.